Hey guys, what's up? Welcome back to the channel. It's Cynicalex, and today I want to talk about Hyperion and discuss and look at in gameplay the changes made and the buffs made to his base kit with the all-new, all-different Hyperion and his Hyperneck uniform, because it is a pretty big bump in terms of damage. And I'm doing this because, of course, he's a paywall character, so a lot of you that have him are curious now, how much better is he? Should I reinvest in him? And I do have some thoughts for you. Additionally, his kit and the changes to his skills have been quite polarizing and quite puzzling in some cases, so I wanted to investigate it further with you guys, give you my thoughts, because I don't think Hyperion is the last character that is going to have these types of abilities, and you're going to need to know how to combine them properly. Crescent is another character that already has this charge up nonsense, which I personally dislike, obviously, because I use the word nonsense. But if we're going to make the most out of it, and if Netmarble is going to continue giving us these types of skills, we're going to have to A, request that they do it in a slightly different way, and then B, we're going to have to conform to it. So the changes made to his skills on paper before we jump into some gameplay are that they doubled the number of hits on Solar Flare. So you can't see it here, but when you go into the skill preview, they doubled the number of hits, so that effectively doubles the damage. His fourth skill is still probably his best skill. His fifth skill now has a ton of different effects, but the effects don't all happen simultaneously. So much like Captain America's sixth skill, which I guess was the original skill that had a charge effect with different buffs activating at different times, the skills that you get will trigger as you charge the skill, and you have to charge the skill a total of like 4 or 5 seconds to get all of these buffs: the all attack, the ignore defense, the ignore dodge, the accumulation, the invincibility, and the all attack as part of the accumulation. The good thing is the two most important buffs, the accumulation and the invincibility, happen immediately. So in that case, in that sense, you can cancel his fifth skill after only obtaining those two buffs and then move on to another skill, and that's what you're going to see me do against Corvus. His passive effect was reworked. It's very similar now to Anti-Man's. He has snare immunity for 2 seconds when he's hit. That part's not the same, but the guard hit and the recovery is the same. So he's got more HP recovery, more HP and recovery rate synergy. His third skill now offers a debuff as well as 20% heal, which is very, very good. And it's down to a 10-second cooldown, which is also very, very good. And then his second skill looks the same, and his first skill looks pretty much the same. I'm not going to talk about the counterattack because it's useless, pretty much. But the second skill does have a full iframe. And then his passive. Now, I may have misspoke when I suggested a few people that Hyperion still needs guard break immunity. He technically doesn't need guard break immunity because he has super armor now on his Sunspark passive, as long as you have him tier 2. Now, you may need to give him guard break immunity, which I still have on him from an old obelisk when he needed guard break immunity. You may still want to give him guard break immunity if you are using him for PvP. Now, I don't think he's going to be very good for PvP. I may investigate that further if I see reports of it, but I doubt it. He doesn't have enough penetration. He only has immune and barrier, and he just doesn't have enough effects cumulatively to really make him a powerhouse. But he also does have a badass new leadership, 45% all attack. So he's worthwhile in some way. So I'm going to dive now into some Corvus gameplay so you guys can see how this new Hyperion looks at rank 522, by the way. So this is a stage 30 Corvus. Normally I like to do 5 cancel into 4 to try to trigger the proc, and then the second skill. The nice thing about the third skill as well is it now drops a damage effect. That circle there will actually do damage, and so because of the long cooldown, we actually missed the proc there, but because of the long cooldown on his fifth skill, the rotation ends up being 5 cancel 4 to time the proc, and then 2, and then 3 into 4 again, because 3 will let you trigger the proc with the additional hits that appear there, and then use the 2 skill as much as you can in between, because of the fact that it gives you a long iframe so that you can protect yourself. Let's get a bit of heal here. But yeah, his damage is not bad. It's probably, I would say, somewhere around Phantomex territory. Now, Phantomex is a decent character, slightly above average, has good survivability, has some iframes. I would probably put Hyperion around that range, possibly a little bit better once he gets up to level 70, because the HP healing is going to scale well for him. But, you know, Phantomex also has that. going to say someone else's name. The only difference between Hyperion and Phantomex is the typing. So the typing for Phantomex is kind of at a disadvantage because he's a speed type in terms of his healing, whereas Hyperion as a universal type has higher base defenses, so it's easier for him to stack up and kind of take a bunch of hits. But the rotation is pretty straightforward. It's awkward, but it's straightforward once you get it. You use 5 in between because it's such a long cooldown, and you try to then proc on 4, and then you'd use 2, and then you use 3, in between here. I'm a little bit late here, so some of these procs are just bad. But I'm not really here to show you his maximum potential because, of course, I still have to get him to level 70. There are some build changes that I want to recommend for you guys if you're thinking of building Hyperion. My build is not optimal anymore, including, of course, the guard break immunity that I mentioned as being unnecessary. So I don't think that trying my hardest on this stage in particular is going to yield very, scientifically accurate results. But I do think we're gonna take some damage here. I do think my rotation is pretty good. 5 cancel 4, 2, 3, and then 3 into 4 again. Because of the fact that you have those hits there, it lingers to allow the proc to land back on the 4th skill, and then you can use the 5th skill to charge up, and then you can actually hit him with the 5th skill and then go into the 4th skill. And that was a much better timing of the proc. That's a much better example of what I'm talking about. And then we would do the 3rd skill here, and then it would time really nicely into the 4th skill. So that's kind of how it works. He can probably clear this stage if I'm a little bit more careful, but this is probably close to his max at this current build. I've got about 40% crit rate. I've got about 160% crit damage. Again, I'm not trying to show you his absolute maximum potential. We're going to have to get his uniform to heroic or legendary. We're going to have to get him to level 70, but this is kind of what you can expect from the character. A mid-level, decent character. He's got some split physical and energy damage, so you do have to keep that in mind. He can help you on Proxima and Corvus, but he's not going to be able to dominate either. So he's going to be kind of, hovering around the 20 to 30 stage range, depending on your cards, depending on your Valor, depending on your obelisks, and how well you can play, etc. Moving on to the actual Hyperneck uniform, a couple of changes, of course. We've got the 15% crit rate, which helps you cap his skills or cap his stats faster, and then his solar power heal gets a bump. So his 4-star passive now becomes an 8% recovery instead of 4% recovery, so it doubles, which is not that great, but it's something. But it also changes his 3rd skill around substantially. The heal is better, but also it's a much longer iframe. Now, longer iframes without much damage are actually worse for World Boss because you're just stalling, and there is a timer, which is important to keep in mind. So I don't imagine that it's going to be good for World Boss, but I do think that Heaven's Fist will be good for something like Conquest, especially if he finds himself in a 3-on-1 situation. He can kind of disengage for a long time, and then when the hits come back down, he may be able to guard break, penetrate someone, get a couple kills in or something like that. I think longer iframes tend to be better for PvP modes rather than PvE modes, but you'll see it's kind of entertaining. And his 4th skill now has more hits, and it also deals the hits faster, so you're able to kind of spring into your iframe or to your obelisk proc, to your damage proc a little bit better. So if I were to rework his obelisk, and I would if I was trying to optimize the character, I think I would just go full damage or full defense. I think it can work either way for Hyperion, but something like crit rate, crit damage, damage proc, or max HP recovery, invincibility, I think both of those are respectable. Of course, if you're going to go PvP, you have to get guard break immunity, so you could do guard break immunity, max HP invincibility. I don't recommend guard break immunity recovery rate invincibility, which is what I have on Thanos, because this obelisk is extremely valuable, extremely hard to get in terms of the rolls, but extremely valuable for Thanos PvP and Deadpool PvP. So I don't recommend giving it to Hyperion unless you're kind of a memester and you're just doing it specifically and truly and exclusively for Hyperion. The final thing I would change is the ISO 8 set. As much as I like Overdrive, I do think that attack speed is important for Hyperion, especially with charging up Atomic Vision and trying to get those additional buffs and then getting that blast off before the enemy iframes. And so because of that, I would stress attack speed. It's nice that his uniform allows you to roll attack speed. A lot of you guys have Shuri's uniform anyways, but having less than 120 attack speed right now, only 118, it does hurt a little bit. So that's one big change that I would recommend if you are building the character now and you have that possibility. So we're going to jump back in now to a similar stage so you guys can see the difference. So this is a slightly higher stage for Hyperion. This is a stage 35 Corvus, but we're going to be basically doing the same rotation, but you can see Ford does quite a bit more damage. We use the second skill to kind of hide away, and now the third skill difference here, it leaves the ball, but now you can kind of move around. As I've showed you this before, and then he drops down. Now this time around it did miss our damage proc, so we are kind of behind, but we do get to land it there, and you can see the damage is quite a bit more effective when you can line it up. His damage is inconsistent because of the fact that you are trying to get that accumulation on the 5th skill, but you're also trying to then proc his 4th skill damage proc rather than landing it solely on the 5th skill. You can land it on the 5th skill, but honestly it's not as good. I prefer to just let the 5th skill go and then use the damage buff up, and we actually missed the proc entirely there, so we're going to land it on like 3 and 2 or something like that. But yeah, I do think that because of the way this character is built, because of the fact that the charge up takes so long, and there's not a lot of residual damage outside of the 3rd skill. The 3rd skill has nice residual damage, and I do appreciate that. It does help time his procs and land them better. But because of the way that the 5th skill works, and because of the fact as well, let me point out, the 5th skill doesn't do damage, and this part really frustrates me. The 5th skill doesn't do damage while you're charging. I don't know why they did that, but please, Netmarble, if you're listening, don't do that again. Please, if the character is charging up, if they have such a powerful attack that grants them so many buffs, they should be doing damage while they're charging. They're gaining energy. That energy has to be going from somewhere to somewhere else. If you need some kind of lore-based excuse, I can find one for you. But yeah, the fact that he just kind of stands there doing nothing to Corvus while he's charging up this kind of ultimate attack is a bit of a betrayal to, I think, the character's strength, and it kind of makes the player feel dumb because you're standing there and basically you're just a sitting duck, asking to get penetrated by these purple lines, asking to get punished in PvP, and it's just bad. But you can see that we've raised the difficulty by 5 stages. We went up to stage 35, and the damage is quite a bit better. So I do think that if you're going to invest in Hyperion, you should get the uniform. I think that it's absolutely a good offer for him, or it's a good deal for him. It's only a 750 uniform as well, I believe, so it's not a kind of tier 2 priced uniform, but it definitely does value bring enough value back into the character. Also keep in mind, for those of you that clear world boss stages pretty often, I'm using strikers, of course, because I need the ignore dodge. I can't rely on the 40% that he gets. Additionally, however, I think that Hyperion will be able to do this stage, or possibly a higher stage, more consistently with stronger strikers. Now, I say that knowing that the strikers are doing a lot of... I just died. I say that knowing that the strikers are doing a lot of the work for him. I think he could do about 35, possibly 40, if he had proper strikers. And again, it matters what my build is. If I have a CTP of energy, for example, for the additional ignore dodge, my cards, my valor, but using characters like Deadpool, being able to sub in characters like Scarlet Witch especially, would be extremely beneficial for Hyperion, because he can charge up that attack, that 5th skill, more consistently when Corvus is mind controlled. I know the mind control doesn't allow Corvus to hit you, so it doesn't allow the accumulation to happen, but the accumulation is still going to happen from environmental hazards. He has those craters on the ground that deal the fire pillars. There's the spears, there's the poison clouds that drop or whatever. So with that, you'd be able to accumulate that, and the accumulation is substantial. It goes all the way up to 225%, which is the same buff again that Crescent and Sharon Rogers have. So it's definitely a substantial buff when you can get it to trigger. It only triggers for 8 seconds, but then it's nice, and it'll land on your next proc, and you'll see at least a bar go down, as you saw there with my one timing of 5 and 4. So the character definitely has potential. He definitely has pieces of his kit that make him powerful, I would say, quite a bit powerful. But the fact that it's a bit awkward to play as him, you have to play manually, I think, to get the most out of the character, means that he kind of like Crescent, not as bad as Crescent, but he kind of just doesn't have a really well-defined place in the game. He's got a good leadership like Crescent, and he's got good survivability with heals and tankiness like Crescent. But besides that, I guess it's for the Hyperion fans. So Hyperion fans, let me know. What do you think of the rework? What do you think of Hyperneck? Are you satisfied? Does this, clearly or kind of semi-accurately portray the character as he should be? Or does he deserve to be even stronger? And how would you change him to be as such? And lastly, one more thing. If you have a better way of tackling the issue of tapping and charging the skill to collect the buffs, this new mechanic, if you have a better way of approaching it than I've shown you in the last 2 videos with Crescent and Hyperion, I really appreciate if you could let me know in the comments down below. Otherwise, yeah, I think this new mechanic kinda sucks. Let me know what you think. Subscribe if you enjoy the content and you want to support me. And of course, if you like what you see, I hope to see you again tomorrow. Take care.